Hello, I'm Captain Foley, and welcome back to Fleetyards, everyone. This episode, which is episode 3 in our Fleetyards series, was made possible by all the dedicated fans that support us on a monthly basis over on Patreon. So if you want to help us out, please head on over to Patreon and give what you can to keep these episodes coming.
But Captain, Commander Cochrana's reporting, just got back from off-world. How have things been in Stargate Command?
Good, but we've got to get ourselves up to the Prometheus for this episode, Commander.
Trouble, Captain?
No, not at all. I just assumed that it would be the ideal place to discuss today's ship.
It certainly would, but Hammond just sent her to a potential furling outpost. Well, that's what Dr. Jackson thinks it may be. Right.
Okay, no big deal. We can do this from here then. Initiate data transmission. And by the way, nice uniform, Commander.
Got it, flaunt it. So the USAF X-303, otherwise known by its codename Prometheus, was Earth's first true starship, even intergalactic spaceship, and was completed in the 6th year of the Stargate program.
Whoa. I just want to go on record and say that O'Neill, 2 L's, was right. The ship should have been called the Enterprise.
Yeah, but they couldn't really name Enterprise. This would be a Fleetyards on the Enterprise then, and don't you think we have enough Enterprises to look at, Stuart?
No.
Be serious. Anyway, yes, it was named Prometheus after a Greek tragedy.
I know, like, who wants that? Am I right?
Yeah, but it did survive quite a while, to be fair.
Fine. The ship was under the operation of the United States Air Force and was manufactured by the Tauri, aka Earth, and launched in the year 2003. Although stolen in 2002, which was in fact her first flight, her official maiden voyage as the finished BC-303 was in 2003. The cost of the ship's construction came in at just over $2 billion US and was a top secret. The ship was 195 meters long, 80 meters wide, with an overall height of 65 meters, with a total of 17 decks. Well, at least according to the Stargate DVD collection magazine, anyways.
But we at Fleetyards want to go on record to dispute this.
Dispute official numbers? Can we even do that? I would ask that if I didn't know all the research you did, Commander.
Yeah, indeed, Stuart. So here at Fleetyards, we have many of the original 3D models used in Stargate. Wow, first of all. And with many TV shows, most in fact, when a ship is designed, its scale is determined, and modelers build to that scale. Once a ship is built, whenever they bring her into a scene, she is the right size in relation to other ships. This keeps things consistent.
Now, the problem is that for certain shots to work, the reality of a ship's scale has to be, well, distorted. 2 examples being the Klingon bird of prey being several different sizes in Star Trek IV alone, and the USS Defiant also altering its size to fit a scene and to look like it could take on much larger ships than herself.
And this is the same for Stargate. We have several examples of this, so much so that we're doing a follow-up episode talking about all these inconsistencies. But when taking a look at these 3D models, these are the default sizes of these ships. They may have been tweaked for certain shots, but we have the defaults.
Now you may ask, how do we know that? Well, Samuel, you worked out a pretty simple and, even if I do say so, as you wrote this little part of the script for me, a genius way of working it out.
Well, thank you, Stuart, in your own words as well. Okay, so part of our Battlestar Galactica archive is a Viper pilot. He is 6 foot, and that is the actual size of him in 3D. They got that right. He was created that way to fit into the perfectly scaled Colonial Viper, and that Viper is in itself scaled correctly with the rest of the Battlestar Galactica ships.
In fact, many of the same team that worked behind Battlestar Galactica also worked on Star Trek, and they also made their ships to scale.
Indeed, and according to those magazines, the X-302 is 30 meters in length. The actual 3D model is 13.8 meters, quite a difference. However, when you put the scaled 3D pilot into the cockpit of the upscaled 30 meters X-302, he does not remotely fit. I did the math, and in fact, if the X-302 was 30 meters long, her pilots would have to be 14 feet tall. So this means the magazine is clearly a bit off. However, when you put the 6 foot person into the 3D model by the default size, at 13.8 meters. It's a perfect fit.
This sets a precedent that the Stargate 3D modeling team built their ships to the correct scale, and this F-302 model was in fact built first of all of the Earth ships. But what about the X-303?
Well, the scales given online for the F302 being 30 metres and the X303 being 195 metres long, that makes her only 6.5 times longer than the fighter, the two-man fighter, remember, if the magazine scales are to be believed, and we already know that at least one of those numbers are wrong. The X303 Studio 3D model is in fact 516 metres long.
Wow, that's actually very different to the official numbers. That's over 2.5 times bigger. Surely being that massively larger, we would have realized that from the show.
While it does sound large, we did actually see that scale in the show. In the Prometheus' last appearance, we can see the F302s launching from her newly refitted pod hangars. And as that shot shows, one of the ship's hangars can accommodate and launch fighters this way with ease. If you bring the magazine-scaled 3D model in and the proven real scale of the F302, we can see this would never happen. However, if you go with the CG scale, it works just fine, although slightly off, which would imply the Prometheus is even bigger. But this was done for effect for the shot, I think.
In fact, if you bring the F302 to her main launch bays, the ones we never got to see being used, she is a perfect fit. The studio model of the X302 and X303.
Now, to back this up even more, the 6-foot man is also in scale with the Girl Death Glider and Pull Jumper studio models. The fact that every single model made by a production team that we have works by a real scale tells us the X303 does, as well as the X304 to follow, even if they're both far larger than it says on the online official scale charts. Although there is a specific sequence in Stargate Atlantis that shows how massive the X304's fighter's bay actually are, and then the scale, I think that makes more sense when you look at that shot. It's big.
So after that rather long explanation, the online magazine says the X303 is 195 meters long, 80 meters wide, with an overall height of 65 meters. So what's the correct scale?
Well, the X303 has a length of 516 metres, 256 metres wide at its widest point, and an overall height of 310 metres.
Wow. Well, there you have it, guys. Now, before we get started and break down all the facts and figures, it is worth mentioning that the Prometheus went through a number of upgrades throughout her lifespan. For the most part, they were all internal changes, and we will talk about those throughout this episode.
But she also had a major refit, which did change the outside of the ship, and that was done just before her destruction in the Season 9, Episode 15 episode Ethon. And we're lucky enough to have that version of the Prometheus 3D model used in the show. So, first, it's worth remembering that by her Season 9 appearance, we'd already seen the X-304 Daedalus class in Stargate Atlantis. We knew what the next generation battlecruiser looked like, and that much more detailed 3D model.
This is likely the reason for the increased detail level of this new ship. In fact, many of the Nurnies, or Greeblies, which mean bits and pieces attached to the hull, are named as Daedalus pieces in the files. So they increased the detail by using pieces from the actual Daedalus model. So very clever.
It actually is. And if you look at the scene files and break down, there's so many added bits. They're just like all called Daedalus. It's kind of ridiculous how much they actually did. The basic shapes are identical, but the details are different. The front or head section has removed the asymmetrical plate detail and laser batteries, as described in the official diagram. All of this has been replaced with symmetrical geometry and with even more detail added to the side.
The main launch bay, the one just below the control tower, has also changed. Gone are the detailing and partially plain area. There is now a consistent physical plate detail over the whole area.
The biggest change are the pods. Previously, they were exclusively hyperspace emitters, and we can tell this is the case because each side of the pod has blue hyperspace emitters that glow when using the engine. It is with the X304 that these side pods became F302 launch bays. So with this new Prometheus refit, and to continue the visual language with this new X304, the Prometheus now launches fighters from these redesigned pods. Now, rather than being open with emitters visible, there's clearly a door and launch area for 4 fighters. This speaks this refit using much smaller hyperspace engines, just like the ones that are on the X304, thereby allowing for most of the pod to now be dedicated to the X302 fighter storage to complement its existing primary bay. It is worth mentioning that people always seem to say that these pods are always capable of launching X302s based solely on its final appearance, but we never see the ship launching fighters before that, and the clear physical changes show this is not the case.
Right. So, now on to general information about this ship. Using inertial dampeners, artificial gravity, and an anti-grav system allowed this vessel to hover in midair. Its sublight engines are capable of boosting it from surface to orbit in less than 30 seconds, and it had a top speed that reached 59% the speed of light, so somewhere around 110,000 miles per second.
Per second. Wow. Engine systems consist of sublet engines, manoeuvring thrusters, and its original launch configuration employed a buffered Nequadria reactor core, although it did at one point have temporary use of an Alkesh hyperdrive when it's proven that they could not correctly account for instability in the Nequadria, which is a sentence we heard a lot of, guys. Am I right, Stargate fans? A lot.
Later, she was fitted with an Asgard hyperdrive. So in essence, the original hyperdrive system was classed as a rustic, rather crude interstellar drive, and then after the refit, it was intergalactic. Because 59% the speed of light is just completely unacceptable. I mean, come on.
Power systems on board were operated by Naquadah generators, and a standard crew complement came in at 115 plus personnel, but the ship could be operated easily by a minimum crew of 20 personnel.
And in many episodes of the show, far less for basic operation, even so far as Vala Maldoran being able to take control and fly the ship single-handedly.
It's a good episode. The hull was comprised of a new Naquadah tritium alloy and was far stronger than anything we developed on Earth before Stargate travel.
The refit employed an Asgard sensor array, though, and targeting systems were standard Earth-based technology. Armament consisted of 16 to 24 railguns, depending on the source material, of course, 12 missile launchers, and a complement of Mark 9 nuclear missiles.
The ship was also outfitted with 8 F-302 fighter interceptors, as well as transport rings, escape pods, and in the refit it was outfitted with Asgard transporters.
Her primary role was as a battle cruiser, Earth's first interstellar battle cruiser to be more precise. The ship served as Earth's primary planetary defense and exploration vehicle in the Milky Way galaxy, so in essence, Earth's first real starship.
And it was a hell of a cool thing to see it when it first appeared.
Should have been called Enterprise.
Prometheus had a variety of means to communicate within and between ships. There were traditional telephones located in corridors and rooms throughout the ship for intra-ship communications. The system also allowed the capability to integrate wireless radio headsets. The ship also had a built-in intercom system for ship-wide messages. It could be activated on the bridge by one of the stations and could also be triggered directly from the commander's chair. It was also equipped for both audio and visual communications outside of the ship as well, despite communication satellites being down.
Prometheus was able to establish a secure video transmission directly to the Oval Office, which displayed on monitors above the main window viewer display. A side viewer also displayed video communications that integrated with alien ship technology, such as Asgard and Goa'uld. The ship could broadcast audio-only messages on multiple frequencies and included the additional feature of translating the broadcast into Goa'uld. However, the communications could not penetrate ancient shielding, as was evidenced upon the discovery of the caves of Avalon in Glastonbury Tor. The Prometheus had 2 communications arrays symmetrically placed on the rear section of the ship.
Now, the Tari did not develop its own shield technology, instead utilizing reverse-engineered Goa'uld shields. However, these shields were replaced with shields of Asgard origin in the refit, as a thank you for assisting with replicators.
Asgard's shielding was first equipped to the Prometheus and eventually the Daedalus class, allowing the Tauri to better confront Goa'uld motherships or other such hostile vessels. These shields could even withstand a sustained barrage from Anubis's flagship.
However, in Season 9, and in fact the Prometheus' last appearance, her shields proved almost entirely ineffective against the Ori satellite weapon. The weapon's first blast ripped through the Prometheus' shields effortlessly, disabling the weapons, hyperdrive, sublet engines, and brought forward shields down to 40%. This was, of course, a foreshadowing of the main Ori warship and their main weapons that could destroy her Talc mothership with a single hit, and the X-304s in 2 hits. Those weapons were pretty devastating.
The anti-gravity pod was housed in the lower section at the rear of the ship, as labeled on the Fenton sequence display. The Prometheus most likely used this feature in entering and exiting its subterranean bay on Earth, as well as for softening any off-world landings. Also for hovering or maintaining a stationary position above the ground, as it did in Antarctica, in order to protect SG1's Teltac during Anubis's attack. Deceleration thrusters were used to slow the ship down. They were situated on the front side of the large rectangular hyperdrive engine sections and were seen being used by SG1 when they landed on the planet Hala. Holla back, girl! I had to. I don't know. Sorry. Serious note.
The hyperdrive engines were first powered by the powerful but highly unstable mineral called Nequadria in the form of an Earth-designed Nequadria reactor core. A buffer was installed to prevent the reactor from going critical due to the Quadra's inherent instability. There, I said it again. Later, new hyperdrive technology was installed by Asgard, as said earlier. Between that time, however, the ship operated on a temporary adoption of a hyperdrive engine from an Alkesh, and as Carter said, they were lucky that worked as a hyperdrive at all, since that was designed for a ship 1/10 of the size. And on a side note there, we talked about scale earlier. Well, if you go by that 1/10 thing that Carter says, if you go by the online scale charts, it's about 1/6 the size. Now, Carter's quite a smart lady. Why wouldn't you say roughly 1/5? Why would you round all the way up to 1/10 if it's 1/6? That seems like quite a miscalculation of size there. However, the original studio models, it's actually 1/10 the size, the Alkesh, because it's the wrong size as well online. That's another indication for the correct scaling based on 3D assets.
There you go. Look what we do for you guys. We figure this stuff out and set things right. Setting right what once went wrong.
Canon.
Quantum leap. Anyway.
Good show.